We are short on time, but I want to open it up to questions from the audience because of that. And if not, I certainly have some questions that I'd like to ask the panel. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, go.
Hi, thanks for all the panelists. It was great. So I have a question for Professor Bayen about the traffic pattern nowadays. I wonder, I think you showed a slide about the LA traffic, how the lights are being changed by this kind of static model. So what's your view on the potential gain by having real-time information? So it's understandable there's more data, but is it clear there's more gain if we were to do things more dynamically?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first thing is that 95% of the arterial roads are not instrumented or instrumented very poorly. So just from a pure information standpoint, if public agencies could have access to Google data, Apple data, or any other sources of data of that magnitude, and we're very excited to see Sidewalk Labs getting in that space, it would be already an enormous gain for the public agencies. But in addition to that, it's not just about the availability of data in real time, it's the understanding of people's behavior. And that's why things like what Balaji is doing is very exciting to me, because as we gain more understanding to people's habits and how we can nudge them, we can really make the infrastructure responsive to that. And that's one thing where that data could really bring enormous breakthroughs. Now, we heard also from the legal standpoint, I mean, getting the companies to share that data with the privacy issues and whatnot, I mean, we're not there yet. And so it's going to take probably a few years before the institutional structure is in place, the legal structures are in place to make that possible to the engineering world.
Just to add a footnote there, if you just go down the street to Santa Monica, they have fully instrumented all their roads. So it's just a different situation because it's a separate city, and they've decided to be in control of the data that's coming there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Saurabh Amin. I'm one of Alex's former students. So many of you actually talked about training students, working with students. So my question to you guys is, in the projects which you talked about, it's a lot of things involved, right? Practical applications, going in the field, collecting data, getting hands dirty, building algorithms, doing theory. So do you have any recommendations on how to teach students? I mean, there are, of course, challenges, and it's good to talk about challenges, but what is your viewpoint? Is it realistic to assume that we can have a generation of students who can really deal with these problems, or there are 2 or 3 categories of students which can do that? What is going to happen?
So let me try, at least our experience at CUSP. The students are organized into teams to do these capstones, typically 5 students. And you try to do that with a diversity of backgrounds and skills in each team. And then maybe one who's better at presentations, another one at munging the data, another one as a policy person, and so on. So they get the experience of working in this multidisciplinary environment. My own sense is you can't teach that, you just have to do it.
I've got a good quote on this one. Those who underestimate the young are both foolish and forgetful. It comes from Dumbledore, who really does know what he's talking about. And I do think, so I'm with Steve, you just model good behavior, help them find mentors, push them forward, and all kinds of things happen.
I really like this idea of client-based learning too, right? Working in teams and kind of real-world applications, kind of having this studio environment, which allows to bring people across fields, I think is a really important way of moving forward in teaching. It takes teams to build solutions of data. We have another question from the audience.
Hi, this question is mainly directed toward Dr. Crawford. Why is it?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Why is it that cities have such a hard time controlling their destiny in terms of fiber? And I'm just thinking about this Google Fiber initiative, where Google was trying to provide reasonably priced internet throughout the country, and then that ended up dying. My understanding being that they were just having such a difficult time dealing with the local governments. And yeah, I'm just wondering if there's anything you can comment about on that.
The reason that we are not Japan, South Korea, Sweden, Norway, is not because of magic, it's because of a failure of policy. So we made a series of decisions over the last 10 years that left us with no path to a national upgrade to fiber. As a result, Cities are really looking to do this for themselves. We shouldn't be waiting for Google to do it. Google is a great visible example of what's possible. What we're trying to do is, in the lab and with all of my projects, is reduce the risk, help cities understand the financial spillovers that come from this, and just trade information. Cities are often just in the dark about what this means, and at the state level, the state legislatures are easily captured, so 20 states have made it either impossible or extremely difficult for cities to act on fiber. So FDR did this for electricity, Lincoln did it for the railroads. We need a national leader to push this agenda forward.
I was curious to hear the panel talk a little bit about the role for using the people in the city to guide decision making. So the participation, the social choice, the voting. I mean, obviously we can imagine that we'd like people to share more data with cities, but what about involving people in the loop with decision making?
I can tell you for traffic, it's very hard. The closest attempt I've ever seen of a form of crowdsourced way of controlling traffic would be people who are voting on what they think their commute is like. But for traffic, it's going to be extremely hard. For other aspects of urbanization, it might be a different place. But crowdsourcing the control for traffic, you see what's happening in the LA Basin with each of the cities. We heard Santa Monica, but each of the cities is in charge of their own traffic control system. And even if you think about decentralizing that process, it is absolutely not leading to the way we improve flow. And all the recent attempts attempt to do quite the opposite, to centralize everything, which requires some form of eternal democracy within the different agencies. So I'm just talking for mobility, but I'd be curious from the other end. Yeah.
There's a participation aspect that is not quite decision, but it leads to decision. At the high school and even junior high school level, one of the most engaging scientific activities you can offer to the students is to measure, collect data, understand what's going on in their own neighborhoods. And the sensors are cheap enough, you can get them to put it out, whether it's pollution or noise or mobility, and analyze the data. And it's a very effective way of engaging them in STEM activities and then getting them to start to understand what some of the problems are in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, this is so just taking the cue from both Steve and Alex. Along these nudge engines, one of the things, Palo Alto has two big high schools, Palo Alto High School, and then Gunn. There was this we built a mobile app for students to go take a picture of their energy meter in the house and then participate in a nudge program. And they had amazing ideas on how, we couldn't give them dollars and, we got stuck there. And they had lots of ideas, like build a bouncy house and then we'll all be happy with that. And I'll throw a party and invite, they had lots of interesting ways in which they could be incentivized. But the goal of this was not only to educate them, but actually to see if we could reduce energy consumptions in their homes. And then nothing like two high schools, duking it out in something like this. And then it just spread through the whole Bay Area. Wait on that. This may be something we had to shelve it to do some other project, but now we might revive it. But I think activism is probably easier to get. Decision making and influencing that, it's not obvious. Because your question, is participation, the great activism, but is decision making is not easy. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it's absolutely essential. So anybody who's worked in urban planning knows that when you do your local development plans or your citywide plans, you have to go through a whole process of consulting with the public. So you hold town hall meetings, and so there's a whole series of new apps now that are about trying to engage people through kind of reflecting back on the plans and giving suggestions and, putting up information on. So that becomes a new kind of set of tools that complement those town hall meetings. They can't replace them because has to be representative, and not everybody is going to use their phone or their computer to engage with governments. So that, is a part of that. The other part of it, of course, is things like hackathons and data dives and kind of civic participation in kind of either working with government or taking data, open data movement, and so on. So there's definitely a role, the danger is everything becomes stewardship, which is for citizens, or it becomes kind of civic paternalism, which is people deciding what's good for citizens, as opposed to citizens being involved in this. So there's a real question around what kind of cities do we want to create? Who are they for? Who's shaping them? And in urban democracies, people have to be involved in that, and we have to find ways, maybe using some of the technologies to enable that to happen. The alternative is it just becomes forms a technocratic and corporatized government in a very top-down way.
Yeah, I agree with Rob. This is all at a very primitive stage right now. A lot of people are making efforts. But the hope is that what Deborah Estrin said, it will happen, that there will be a more visible neighborhood level set of things to act on with tiny shards of your time that could allow citizens not only to engage but to affect. But there are no great successes in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest issues is how do you communicate that data, how to get kind of publics to be able to read it, to understand it, and this gets into the data literacy. We are now over time, and I see 2 questions, and hopefully you can come up and ask the panel afterwards, but we're gonna have to stop. And really interesting topics, really sparked a lot of questions for me, and I hope you pursue asking them at the break. Thanks so much. Thank you for the panel.